So we're in Canvas, and when we're working through modules, this is where everything gets accessed. Our in-person agenda, it has what we're gonna do and any links of stuff that we need, and this is currently just a sample. I'm making the video right now that will go here. But the idea is I will record at least one of these classes throughout the 6 classes today and tomorrow, and I'll post a video of this class just in case you're gone. So in the event that you're gone for a day, or you're gone for 2 weeks, this is where you could go through, and you should, let me rephrase that, this is where you should go through, and you can find a video of what you missed during this class.
Well, today's already Tuesday, the next couple days, you got missing word. You got missing word.
I can't get considered right now, so you can hit it, and thank you. So that's where you would go. So in the event that you're gone a day, the expectation is you go and you figure out what you missed, and this is a great place to do it. If you're gone for 2 weeks, this is where you'll go and you'll hear and know what you're talking about. My expectation is that if you are gone, that you are maintaining pace with us. If you are gone for 2 weeks and you come back the day of the test, my expectation is that you will take that test on that day, because my expectation is that you are keeping up with everything in class as if you were in class. Now, if you get sick, it's a whole nother conversation, but we need to be part of that conversation. So if you are at home and you're sick and you can't keep up, then you need to be letting us know that. Otherwise, our expectation is you're maintaining. Okay, so just be aware of that. So this video is not the video that we're actually going to, this isn't today's video, it's just really there as a placeholder so I can show you that right now. In the event that there are some images or something from on the screen, I'll post those images, answer keys, whatever, that'll also go right there. So that's our in-person days, and then like this is an activity that we're gonna do today, and it'll take you to our assignment page. When we submit assignments, there's often a couple different options and how you can submit it. We will offer paper copies, and most people will take a picture and submit that paper copy, and that's fine. Otherwise, I'll link PDFs or Google Docs as a different option, depending upon the situation. One of your to-do list things for tomorrow is you're gonna have some time to complete this DNA structure worksheet. And on the PDF, there's 5 pages, but I'm only at this point asking you to do pages 1 and 2. And on tomorrow's virtual day, okay, there is a link to section 1 guided notes. And you all hopefully are pretty familiar with guided notes at this point. But again, paper copy, Google Doc, PDF, recorded a video. 1 to second semester where I walk you through, or I talk you through the presentation, or the actual Google slides are there as well. So you do what's best for your learning, whether that's listening to me talk over the slides or going through the slides, that's kind of up to you. Again, submitted via Canvas. Okay, and as the week goes on, we'll kind of publish more, but as of right now, we only have through tomorrow's virtual day. But Canvas modules is the way we're gonna go. And because we put due dates, and hopefully I went through and I created a section specifically for you. So whatever period you are and whatever day you are, so for example, right now you are 4A, I've created a section of 4A because then I can create a due date for 4A. If for some reason when you go, you're not seeing some things or you can't submit something, let me know because I maybe missed you in assigning, I had to manually add you to your section. So if you aren't showing up or you can't submit some of these things, let me know, because that's been an issue in the past. So that's kind of some Canvas stuff. Any questions about Canvas? I know most of you already had me, and this is hopefully this review, but that video is something I hopefully want you to kind of remember that if you're gone, that's what you should be looking at. Okay, so we are moving into a new unit, and we're going to start that unit today. And that unit is on DNA. So when we talk about DNA, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's an acronym. And it's what we talk about a lot of times when we talk about genetics. So I'd say DNA is a relatively common word that we use and we hear about, and we don't really think twice about it. But when you stop and you kind of look back, DNA is actually, in terms of science related, it's a pretty new idea. So in section 1 guided notes, a lot of the scientists that they're talking about, we're talking like 1950s. Like they were doing research in 1950s on DNA that looked at structure and how things could pass on. 1800s, late 1800s, they knew about DNA. They didn't know actually what the role of DNA was. But it's like 1950s, so we're talking like 70 years. And you can say, well, that was a long time ago. Yeah, I know. You know, Gregor Mendel was the 1800s, so pea plants, how things get passed on. We knew things got passed on from one generation to the next. We just didn't know the mechanism. So we're really talking 70 years. And in the 70 years of DNA kind of research and kind of new technology, we really kind of advanced very quickly in a lot, and with technology is kind of the thing. So I've referenced this and I've kind of pointed to this poster about the human genome a bunch of times. But this is the idea that we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, 46 chromosomes, and we knew that. That wasn't new, but the idea is we now know what is on each chromosome. It's called the human genome. This is like 2004, they sequenced the human genome. So they really have a pretty good understanding of what gene is on every part of every chromosome. And that was a pretty big thing that they've accomplished. Now, since the human genome, they've done this with a bunch of other animals to kind of look at some of their genetic structure. But this is '04. Sometimes you'll hear about cloning or maybe some genetic modification. It's like 96? 96. The first mammal that was ever cloned was Dolly the sheep. That was 96, which is a little further away than I actually thought it was. It's like 24, 25 years ago. But science could really clone a human if someone chose to. Ethically, legally, they aren't allowed to. There's like laws against it. But it could, they have the technology that it could be done.
That's scary.
It could be scary, or it could be maybe a cool thing. I don't know, it kind of depends. But you could, if you wanted to, if you have enough money, you could clone your dog or your cat, and you could make an exact genetic copy of that pet that you had and you grew up with.
But wouldn't they not have the same personality?
Why? They have the same genetic information, but why might they be a different behavioral?
Because it's technically not the same.
What do you mean?
It's not the same dog.
Why not? Genetically, it's identical.
It will never
Has
be the same
different
dog.
experience.
Different experiences, absolutely, right? So because of the different experiences that you or that dog or any animal has, creates what they are today. So I would agree that genetically that dog is identical, but it doesn't mean they're going to behave the exact same. Because maybe you got that dog when you were 1 year old. And I'm guessing a lot of 1-year-olds aren't the kindest to dogs because they don't really know what you should and shouldn't do to a dog, right? So maybe you jump on the dog, maybe you sit on the dog's back and it walked around with you because that's what it did and it just tolerated it. I don't know. But now that you're 15, 16 years old, if you were to get that exact same genetic dog, are you still going to be climbing on its back, or are you still going to be going like, puppy, and hitting it? Probably not, right? So the way that dog reacted to you, because you aren't the same as you were then, yeah, it probably would. And there's a lot of philosophical debates out there. It's called nature versus nurture, and that's that exact idea, is the events of your life, or that dog's life during the upbringing, create the behavioral patterns, or really the animal that they are. Same thing with you, right?
Wouldn't even say if, how much do the experiences and.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's,
I mean,
yep.
we know definitely plays a role. The question is, well, how much?
Yeah.
Is it 60-40 nature, nurture? Is it 70-30, 80, you know what I mean? Or is it always completely independent, your experiences versus your nature versus your experiences versus your nature? Who knows?
There's a movie, I don't know if I'll talk about it. There was a movie we showed last year that it was, we had a little extra time right before semester, I think we showed it right before the semester.
That was good, that was good.
It's a movie called Three Identical Strangers, and it was a video that it went through and followed three identical triplets throughout their, like, they were separated at birth, identical, so an identical twin is genetically identical to, for lack of better words, they are a clone of one another. If you are an identical twin, you are a clone, genetically identical to your twin. Same thing if you're identical triplets. So these are a set of triplets, identical triplets, all genetically identical to one another, but they got separated at birth. Okay, they were put up for adoption, and then they were adopted by three different families, and then they were raised differently. Well, in the end, they went through and that was kind of the question of this, what they were doing is how does the parents that you have affect who you are today? Because genetically, they're identical, but those three individuals were different because of how they were brought up and the experiences they had, and the parents and the support or lack of support that they had as children growing up. So it did have an impact, but then it was like, what has the bigger impact was kind of the question. But yeah, absolutely.
It was fascinating.
Yeah, they didn't know. They were actually part of a research, but even the parents didn't know that. Like, they just adopted a child. They didn't know they were one of three. They didn't know that they were being like observed behavioral stuff. They just had like someone would come and like check in every now and then to see how the child's doing in the placement of the adoption agency. But it was really an evaluation of how that child was developing as an individual. Kind of questionable. It was questionable
Yeah,
ethics.
God, that's-
It was an ethical question.
That'd
Yeah.
be interesting, adopt someone, learn like 20 years later that you were part of an experiment the whole time.
Well, and it wasn't-
That's exactly what happened. They were
because
in college.
They weren't supposed to find out, right?
No.
It was a complete accident that they even
Yeah.
figured it out.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah,
It
like
was-
one guy went to college, one like as we'll just say like like graduated high school, went to college, and then didn't come back to college the second year. Okay, he's like, you know what, college isn't free, I'm not going. But I don't know. Hopefully someone's gotten it. But the twin decided like, hey, I'm gonna go to college, and ended up going to the exact same college that the other one did. And they're like, John, good to see you. I didn't think you were coming back. And he's like, what the heck are you talking about? And then it was like, oh, news story, separated at birth, blah, 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 blah. And then there's a third guy like, hey, he looks just like me. And then it was, it was this kind of weird kind of,
Yeah.
Coincidence.
yes. So it's interesting.
It's worth checking out.
I don't know where you find it. You might be able to, you'd have to probably rent it. You might be able to find it on like Amazon Video or Netflix or something like that. But it's called Three Identical Strangers. It was good. It was good. I don't know. We have a copy of it.
With the way they crossed their legs and like there was things like, yeah, it was just you're like,
Mannerisms
what?
were, yeah.
Yeah.
So the idea is we could, that's like, they aren't really clones, right? That's just multiple births. But we have the technology today that we can clone animals. Should we clone? Shouldn't we clone? Well, that's the ethical question. Is it okay to clone your pet dog because it was a very beloved dog? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But then is it okay then to clone your brother? And if so, why or why not? What's the difference between cloning your brother and your pet dog? So ethical issues, is it right or is it wrong? Not saying it one's is and isn't. Well,
But your brother's
ethical, like legally, the answer is no, you can't legally clone a human. There's also some ethical things out there about we can modify your DNA to treat a particular like disease. We have the technology, like maybe you don't produce a certain protein, which then makes you sick, that we can go through and modify something so you do make that protein, so therefore you no longer have those symptoms. Then people would say, well, that sounds okay. Well, yeah, that probably does sound okay because you are not now sick, right? But at what point is it not okay?
So question, if you were to clone yourself,
Mhm.
would you have the same voice
Probably. Yeah, your clone would probably have a lot, unless there was something throughout your life that caused your voice to change, like physically, like there was some type of injury. I'd say, yeah, your voice would probably sound the same. Your voice would probably sound the same. You'd probably have similar like hair colors, but like my hair changes a little bit in the summer versus winter, so maybe environmental does have some impact on it, absolutely. So, so there's some interesting kind of ethical issues. And a couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, I talked to someone, I think it was 2 years ago, there was a scientist in China who actually modified the DNA of an unborn child, actually a couple unborn children. He got arrested. It was illegal. He was experimenting on humans in a way that he wasn't supposed to be. I don't know whatever happened in the outcome of that, but it was not what he was supposed to be doing. He claimed it was for, I don't remember, it was to make them less susceptible to some disease, but there was a side effect.
Conveniently, the side effect.
Conveniently, maybe coincidentally, the side effect they believe of that altered DNA sequence was that those children should have above average intelligence. So, did he do it for the intelligence or did he do it for the disease? But, so it is something that could be done. Like the things in sci-fi movies that we sometimes see aren't maybe as far-fetched as we maybe sometimes think. So, but that's kind of what we're going to get into is DNA and how we can do this. But just realize this field of DNA is a pretty new and it's a pretty quick and changing and advancing field. Now, DNA is different than RNA. And you maybe have heard about mRNA recently in the news because the COVID vaccine is an mRNA vaccination where they are where they insert an mRNA sequence into your body. And what does that do? And we're going to actually talk about what DNA codes for proteins. And there's a process that DNA to mRNA to proteins that we are able to do some of that stuff. And they were able to manufacture in a lab the mRNA sequence for this vaccination that's rolling out right now. So it's a pretty quick and changing field. With new technology, we can do more stuff. But that's kind of where we're going. So we have some time. There's two things that we want you to work on. Okay, there's two things that you will work on. The order in which you work on them and which one you do now versus tomorrow is kind of up to you. So there are two different things. This worksheet is called DNA structure and replication. If you were to click on this, it's a 5-page PDF. We are only asking you to do pages 1 and 2 at this point in time because it's only looking at the DNA structure. On page 3 is replication, and we aren't ready for replication yet. So there's this worksheet. It's 2-page, again, the PDF's 5, but we're only asking for pages 1 and 2. It is an assignment that will be submitted via Canvas and is due the day before you come back next. So for you guys, it'd be due Tuesday night at 11:59 technically. So there's that for you to work on. Otherwise, there's these guided notes. That's your virtual day assignment. So whether you do this one first or this one first, it doesn't really matter. They're both due prior to coming to class next Wednesday or Thursday if you're on the video. So there's that. There are paper copies if you want a paper copy on either that lab table, there's 2 sheets, or on this front cart, there are them. And the expectation is that you're working on one of those 2, and then, hang on, and then when you are done with that, then make sure we submit those. And if you have questions about how to submit, please let us know.